President Biden signs historic bill to tackle crumbling U.S. infrastructure. The Biden-Harris administration, along with Congress, has granted billions of dollars for major transportation projects throughout the United States. Thanks to the President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law, many infrastructure projects are either underway or have begun since it has passed almost 3 years ago. I should mention that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021, or IIJA for short, also goes by the name of the Biden Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. The IIJA and Bipartisan Infrastructure Law are often used interchangeability. For reference, I should mention that the words law and bill may be used interchangeability in this video. It's worth noting that when this bill passed in 2021 in the House of Representatives, 215 House Democrats voted yes, and only 13 House Republicans voted yes. 200 House Republicans voted no. In the Senate, only 19 Republicans voted yes. Many Republicans took credit for the infrastructure bill they voted against. Also, interestingly enough, but not surprising, were Republicans who voted no against the IIJ, a Biden bipartisan infrastructure law, and were vocal about it, but quietly requested or supported funding for their state from the very same bill they voted against. For example, Republican House member Tom Emmer of Minnesota voted no against the bill and called it, quote, multi-trillion-dollar socialist wish list, and criticized Democrats for supporting it. Then, a few months later, after making that statement and criticizing Democrats, he quietly provided his support for funding to improve part of a highway in his district in a detailed letter to Biden-appointed Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Another example came from Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, who voted against the bill and publicly criticized it, but was now trying to appeal to Buttigieg because, quote, as a former mayor, you understand better than anyone the time and money that goes into applying for highly competitive grants, end quote. Republican House member Maria Elvira Salazar of Florida and Republican House member David Valadao of California, just like Emmer and Tuberville, openly bashed the bill but privately supported funding from it. Republican House member Paul Gosar, an open Biden critic, labeled the bill as, quote, phony, and in a statement said, this bill only serves to advance the America Last socialist agenda, while completely lacking fiscal responsibility, end quote. But he quietly wrote 3 separate letters in support of funding for infrastructure projects in his district and state. And lastly, we cannot end this part of video without including probably one of the most openly critical of the Biden administration and the IIJ, a bipartisan infrastructure law, Republican House member Lauren Boebert of Colorado, who voted no and said the bill was, quote, garbage, but then sent a letter to Pete Buttigieg in support for $33 million for a new bridge. These were just some of the many Republicans who opposed the bipartisan infrastructure law but quietly sought funding from it. A majority of the Republicans who quietly wrote letters in support of funding for their districts have not made public statements about those letters. The IIJ, a Biden bipartisan infrastructure law, intends to tackle many infrastructure needs, including waterways and ports, land, public transportation, electric and power, and so forth. For decades, engineers and infrastructure experts have stated that the U.S. infrastructure system is dismal at best and serious investments need to be made. Back in March 2021, before the signing of the IIJA in November 2021, the American Society of Civil Engineers, or ASCA for short, gave the U.S. infrastructure system a C- grade and estimated that it may cost up to $5.937 trillion to fully upgrade the U.S. infrastructure system. Just to reiterate, the ASC's infrastructure C- grade was given in March 2021. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act bipartisan infrastructure law was signed in November 2021. However, I should reiterate, most Republicans voted no for this bill. I have to admit, trying to analyze and break down the content of the IIJA wasn't easy, even confusing at times, which is why I'm grateful that I came across Gordian.com, who provided a simple breakdown of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. IIJA will grant $1.2 trillion to infrastructure projects over the next 5 years, starting from 2022, and this also includes $550 billion in net new investment. The IIJA also grants $110 billion for bridges, roads and trains and buses transportation projects, $65 billion in electricity and power infrastructure, and $55 billion for water infrastructure. Here is a screenshot of the breakdown of all the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act bipartisan infrastructure law funding. Billions of dollars have been or will be allocated to 37 major transportation projects across the United States. In this video, we will look at several of these major transportation infrastructure projects across the nation that are or will be benefiting from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, bipartisan infrastructure law of November 2021. Infrastructure projects, bridges and highways. The John A. Blatnick Bridge. Over $1 billion was granted to fix and replace this 66-year-old bridge that connects Minnesota and Wisconsin. It was expected to be closed by 2030, but now that won't happen thanks to funding from the federal government. With over 33,000 vehicles crossing this bridge every day, the Blatnick Bridge plays an important role in connecting freight corridors and commercial vehicles. Both states have agreed to put $400 million each towards renovating the bridge. Some of the renovations include expanding lane shoulders to improve safety, and building a new path for pedestrians and bicyclists, and increasing weight capacity for larger freight vehicles so they will no longer have to take lengthy detours. I should point out that Republican House member Peter Stober of Minnesota voted no on the infrastructure bill that would fund this bridge, but was, quote, proud to advocate for these funds, end quote. He was quickly reminded by social media that he voted no on the bill. The I-5 Bridge. $600 million was granted to Washington and Oregon to help renovate and replace the I-5 bridge. This bridge connects Portland, Oregon to Vancouver, Washington, and is a hub for commercial vehicles. Additionally, up to 130,000 vehicles drive across the bridge every day per statistics from regional transportation agencies. This funding couldn't come at a better time, as there is a high likelihood of the bridge collapsing in an earthquake due to its old age and repair needs. The goal is to update I-5 to an earthquake-resistant, multi-purpose bridge. I just want to quickly mention, if you're still watching this video, thank you. Also, if you like the information so far, we encourage you to hit the like button. It will help us out greatly because it tells YouTube that you find our video informative. And with this being an important election year where so much is at stake, liking this video helps send it out to the YouTube world where other potential voters could see. Now back to the video. The Sagamore Bridge. $372 million was granted to fix and renew the Sagamore Bridge in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. This bridge is nearly 90 years old, and the U.S. Department of Transportation concluded that it is, quote, currently considered functionally obsolete and structurally deficient, end quote. The goals for fixing and renewing the Sagamore Bridge includes renovations to bridge design and construction and renovations to local roadway connections. Louisiana International Terminal Project. $300 million was granted for a new container terminal for the Port of New Orleans. The project received $226.2 million from the Infrastructure for Rebuilding America grant and $73.8 million from the National Infrastructure Project Assistance Program under the IIJA. This program provides grants to projects that have a high chance to, quote, generate national or regional economic mobility or safety benefits, end quote, according to the U.S. Department of Transportation. Section of I-10 that runs through the Gila River Indian Community in Arizona. Arizona Department of Transportation received $95 million to widen a 10-mile section of the I-10 highway that runs through the Gila River Indian Community in Arizona. According to the Arizona Department of Transportation, the grant was given to upgrade and enhance the conditions and improve safety for part of the I-10 highway that's located within the Gila River Indian Community. Roughly 120,000 vehicles drive on that stretch every day per statistics from the Arizona Department of Transportation. Residents of the Gila River Indian Community describe a portion of the stretch that runs through their community as, quote, unreliable, unsafe, and often described as the fatal funnel due to the high number of accidents and fatalities in the area, end quote. With the $95 million grant, the much-needed repairs and upgrades can be made. A DOT director, Jennifer Toth, said in a written statement, quote, a DOT is excited to receive this funding and to work on this critical project. The federal grant dollars are critical for expanding the principal roadway between Phoenix and Tucson. The project will deliver the best infrastructure to improve drive times and enhance safety. Democrat U.S. Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona stated, It will be a game-changer for the Gila River Indian community. I-376 corridor in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The I-376 will get a new lease on life thanks to a $142 million grant from the federal government. Biden-appointed U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was in Pittsburgh earlier this year to announce the $142 million grant for the highway. People in the community have high hopes this funding will help stop the flooding around downtown Pittsburgh. The flooding is locally known as the, quote, the bathtub portion of the interstate highway. The grant will also contain funding for 5 electric buses, renovations for commuters along the Martin Luther King Jr. East Busway, and the creation of mile-long sidewalks that connect bus stops to communities. Hood River White Salmon Bridge in Oregon and Washington. According to OBP.org, the $200 million grant will go towards 40% of the budget to renovate and fix this almost 100-year-old bridge that local officials called, quote, structurally unsound, and that the needed upgrade is, quote, long overdue. U.S. Senators Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, both Democrats from Washington, helped secure funding for this bridge. Roughly 4.3 million vehicles drove on Hood River White Salmon Bridge in 2023. This shows the magnitude of how much of a necessity this bridge is to the local and regional population. It also serves as an important link for wildfire evacuations. The renovations will include higher clearances, wider lanes, earthquake-resilient technology, and pathways for bikes and pedestrians. The Cross Bronx Expressway in New York. The National Infrastructure Assistance Program, along with the Infrastructure for Rebuilding America program, under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, granted $150 million to New York State for the Cross Bronx Expressway. The goals of this expressway project include upgrading bicycle, pedestrian, and transit connections that run along the highway and parallel routes, increase the amount of open space available, improve safety on community routes, and revamp traffic operations for freight vehicles. I-90 in Montana. Montana received $66 million for its Mineral County I-90 improvement project. The goal of this project includes fixing and renovating almost 60 miles of I-90 by upgrading the drainage systems, enhancing safety measures, making that section of the highway more resilient to weather conditions, and remodeling and renovating 3 bridges on westbound 90. The Bridge Investment Program. $2.1 billion for the Bridge Investment Program that gives grants for bridges that are old and aging and need repairs or enhanced and modernized features. For example, $1.6 billion went towards renovating the Brent Spence Bridge in Kentucky. Infrastructure projects, buses, railway systems, and terminals. Rural areas. Rural areas throughout the U.S. received $2.8 billion in grants for infrastructure projects. Rail corridors in Nevada. $28 million was granted for the Elko, Nevada Rail Corridor Enhancement Project. The goals for this project include upgrading the Union Pacific Railroad at the Elko Yard, fixing and renovating the tracks and the surrounding infrastructure, and improving the signal structures, potentially reducing 2.5 hours of delays for freight trains that run along the corridors. East River Terminal in Georgia. $15 million was awarded to one of Georgia's busiest seaports. This grant will cover the cost of new docks and improvements to some of its shipping terminals. It will restore 3 docks at the Port of Brunswick's East River Terminal and bolster up the export of wood pellets at the port. Amtrak's Northeast Corridor. $16.4 billion was granted to upgrade Amtrak's Northeast Corridor and $8.2 billion to upgrade the rails and pave the way for the country's first high-speed rail systems. The Hudson River Terminal in New York and New Jersey. $11 billion was approved from the Biden-Harris administration and Department of Transportation to renovate and upgrade the 110-year-old Hudson River Terminal that connects New York and New Jersey. Over 200,000 passengers drive on it daily, and it's known for causing delays among the regular users. The Frederick Douglass Tunnel in Maryland. $4.7 billion was granted to renovate the 150-year-old tunnel in Baltimore. In addition to the tunnel, 2 new high-capacity tunnel tubes will mainly serve electrified passenger trains, which would help reduce noise and air pollution for the community. These tunnel projects will also benefit MARC Transit and Amtrak. Construction for these projects has begun. The Bus Rapid Transit System in Minnesota. $240 million was granted for a 10.3-mile bus rapid transit system in St. Paul, Minnesota, that's estimated to serve around 2 million passengers every year. The Phoenix Northwest Light Rail in Arizona. $198 million was granted to expand the Phoenix Northwest Light Rail in Arizona, which is estimated to serve 2 million passengers annually. Boston Logan Airport's Terminal E in Massachusetts. $84.5 million was granted to Boston Logan Airport's Terminal E in Massachusetts. This funding will help with constructing new passenger waiting areas, increasing capacity for airliners and passengers, and upgrading energy efficiency measures. These are just some of the many major transportation infrastructure projects that are going to happen or have already started happening around the country since the IIJ, a bipartisan infrastructure law, passed in November 2021. President Biden had tried to work with both Democrats and Republicans to create a plan that would tackle America's infrastructure needs. And so far, he's been able to get the ball rolling with the IIJ, a bipartisan infrastructure law. This bill is part of the Biden-Harris administration Investing in America agenda, which also includes the CHIPS and Science Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. As of January 2024, the Biden-Harris administration has announced over $400 billion in bipartisan infrastructure law funding, with more funding to be rolled out in the coming months and years. More than 40,000 infrastructure projects throughout the U.S. have been funded with this bill. The administration has also assembled $640 billion in clean energy investments in private sector manufacturing. And because of these measures, over 210,000 clean energy jobs and 670,000 construction jobs have been created. President Biden Build Back Framework, along with this comprehensive bipartisan infrastructure deal, are expected to add 1.5 million jobs per year over the course of several years, according to Moody's Analytics. As mentioned earlier, these infrastructure projects are slated to also stimulate local communities' economies in a multitude of ways, including creating many jobs in different sectors. This IIJA intends to be the strong starting point for addressing America's infrastructure by renovating roads, bridges, and rails, upgrading drinking water systems, integrating high-speed internet access for all Americans, addressing the climate crisis, advancing environmental justice, and investing in underfunded and marginally underserved communities. Will the IIJ be able to achieve all of this? Only time will tell. However, it does lay the groundwork and provides a starting point that hopefully future administrations can build upon. Some have asked, didn't Donald Trump create an infrastructure bill? Well, the answer to that is yes and no, but rather he tried to and failed. Trump's failed attempt to create and pass his own infrastructure bill would have to be for another video. When it comes to Trump's infrastructure plans, these are just some of what came up. It's fair to say Biden picked up where Trump failed. President Biden was able to get the most comprehensive legislature passed in history to start tackling our infrastructure needs. This concludes our video. If you have managed to watch it until the end, we thank you. If this video has been helpful to you, liking and sharing this video and subscribing to our channel would mean a lot to us. What that does for us is it gives us an indication that we are building an audience and that we are creating helpful content for our viewers.